We love Montana history, and we love history in general because we have Rob Nadelson on the show all the time, who is an historian and an attorney. And we've had lots of great authors, but we have right in studio. This is great to have him in studio this morning. This is Greg Strandberg is joining us. He's the author of Tribes and Trappers, A History of Montana, Volume 1. But that's not the only one you've written, right? First of all, welcome to the show.
All right, thank you. I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me on the show, John and Peter. And I'd like to also say thank you so much for doing a great job of keeping us informed about current events here in Missoula and everything else that we might not hear otherwise.
Well, we try. We try.
Do what we can.
And if we don't know, we just make it up.
Yeah, and at worst, at least the phone line's open so people can call in and complain when we get things wrong.
That's right.
As they did yesterday.
Oh, they certainly did. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm from Helena. I graduated Helena High School, moved to Missoula in 2001. I got a...
You're a fellow Bengal?
I sure am.
All right, good job.
Oh, it's cute.
Yeah.
You going to sign his yearbook?
I'll bring mine.
There you go.
I have to dig mine out of storage, but came to Missoula and graduated from the University of Montana in 2008 with a degree in history, and here I am now, ready to talk about some early Montana history.
Yeah, so the reason I got Greg on was, I saw The Revenant, and I still haven't seen the movie because
it's great.
As a father of three whose wife is studying, I don't get out much. But
this is not a movie you want to take your wife or kids to.
My wife likes...
It's a guy movie.
She's a nurse. She deals with babies shooting out of orifices all day. So I'm sure the graphic content can be dealt with.
Okay.
But the story is about a mountain man that did spend a little bit of time in Montana. But the thing that I've always wondered is why hasn't there been a story about John Colter? Because he seemed like when I was growing up, when I would read these, I had this big yellow book of the American West, I think it was called. It had all these pictures, all the brands and stuff. And there was a story about Colter's Hell in it. And it just fascinated me because this guy was so intense. And I was wondering, why hasn't there been like a TV movie or a drama or anything about this? But then I thought maybe The Revenant was about this guy, but it's not. It's about another guy I actually hadn't heard about until the movie came out, which is a guy named Hugh Glass. So I start researching him, and then Greg's name pops up, and I remembered talking to him about a past campaign. You ran for a House seat, right?
Yeah, I ran for House District 98 here in Missoula back in 2014. And
I was like, whoa, this guy's from Missoula. So, put one and one together. Let's get him on the air and talk about mountain men. Made sense to me. So let's talk about this movie a little bit. I don't want anyone to walk away from this or listening to this and have the movie ruined for them. And I don't want the ruined for me. So instead of talking about the movie, let's talk about the actual guy, Hugh Glass. Okay. This character, was he a pirate?
Yeah, that's one of his things in his early life. He might have been a pirate down on the Gulf of Mexico, and then he would have came up to the upper Missouri around 1823. And that was the year that the movie takes place in, is 1823. And it's going to be more over in the Dakota region, not quite in Montana. But the thing was, in 1823, they were heading up the Missouri to come into Montana, to come down to this area on the Yellowstone and Bighorn River where they had a fur trapping post where they would spend the winter trapping beaver.
Okay, so this stuff about him being a pirate, true? Like,
it might be.
Did he have a pirate name? Did he have a shanty? I mean...
I don't know anything about that, but there is a book that's called Hugh Glass, Pirate, Pawnee, and Fur Trapper or something. So there is a lot of stuff in his early life where he might have been down there, but it's a bit sketchy, and I don't really get into his life.
Because it almost sounds like a folktale.
It seems like that, and I mean, there's no pictures of this guy. We don't know the exact dates of his death. He really has a lot of mythical characters.
So as a historian, like what stuff do you know? Well, actually happened with this guy?
We know a few exact dates in his death. For instance, the main reason that he was up in that area was for fur trapping, like you said. And we know that in mid-August of 1823 is when he would have got mauled by that grizzly bear, which is one of the main things in the movie.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, it's amazing. I don't know how they did that, but it is so realistic, it literally brings you up out of your seat.
Now, if he had been with a modern Montanan, he would have known you just take your fist and shove it in the bear's throat. Story over.
Exactly. We all remember that news story, right? But I guess they didn't know that back in the day because that grizzly sure had its way with him in that movie.
Well, you bet.
How did he deal with it? I understand he had weapons, right? He had a gun, he had knives.
Yep. all the mountain men would carry a rifle with them. They would usually have a knife on them. They might have 2 rifles. And it looks like in the movie, he got 1 shot off. But with the grizzly bear, you can put a couple bullets into these things, and they'll keep charging you. And in this case, the grizzly charges Hugh Glass. He gets knocked over. He's probably trying to reach for his knife. But again, the grizzly's getting its paws up there in his face, knocking him around. And finally, he does manage to get it, or his friends hear him come up and shoot the thing and save him. But by that time, he's just out of it. He's
a
totally
mangled mess. Yeah.
And is it true he was stabbing the bear with his knife while he was being hit? Do we know that?
I don't think we know for sure exact characteristics of what went on in the fight, but I would assume if he could reach that knife, he was probably doing everything he could with it.
So anyway, the bear dies,
Yep.
right? On top of him?
Probably on top of him, maybe rolls off. I'm not sure exactly again, but he does get his friends there to look at him. They realize, wow, this guy is in bad shape. He's probably going to die.
And that's where real friends matter, right? So what happens next?
You don't want to know. Because I don't want to give away the movie.
No, this isn't the movie. This is the real guy.
Okay. And we do have a caller who wants to visit with you, Greg. So let's get Joe on the line. Joe, you're on with Greg Strandberg. Hi.
Yeah, hi. How you doing?
Excellent. What's up?
I can't wait to go see the movie, but I wish somebody would make a movie about Henry Plummer, the sheriff in Montana, and the vigilantes that went after him all.
3777, my man.
Yeah, you got a really good point on that one, Joe, because Henry Plummer is one of the great characters in Montana history. I was really lucky to get Magic City Magazine in Billings to allow me to do a piece on Henry Plummer, and we just don't know a lot in Montana about his early life in California, and he was actually sentenced for a time to do some time in San Quentin prison.
Whoops.
But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that number, by the way, it's one of those secret codes. If you are driving around town, you see a sheriff's vehicle.
Yeah.
Look on the side. You'll see that number, that 3777.
Highway Patrol.
Oh, I'm sorry, Highway Patrol, right. And I don't think anyone really knows what it means. Like you have 3 days and 7 hours or 77 minutes. Or
a grave is 3 feet wide, 7 feet long, 77 inches deep, or 77 inches long and 7 feet deep.
And basically, my understanding is they would put this number on you. It was like the black mark in Treasure Island, right?
3777.
You knew they were coming after you.
Yeah, the vigilantes would strike, and that was it. So
why the Montana Highway Patrol celebrates vigilantism on the side of their vehicles, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's part of Montana history, man. It's part of makes us what's so colorful. Now, if I'm wrong, and I often am wrong, please let me know. Give me a call. I want to be accurate in the things that I say. 721-1290. But that's my remembrance of 3777. Is that right?
That sounds pretty accurate. That's a bit more than I know.
So let's just put it this way. My understanding of the movie, which I haven't seen either.
Okay.
I only know the history from reading about Hugh Glass, okay?
Right.
I think it's ethical to talk about the history.
Okay.
Aside from have you seen the movie, Greg?
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay. Is it completely historically accurate? Probably not.
It's not towards the end, but the feel of the movie, the look of the movie, what the characters look like, what they were carrying, wow, I think they do a really good job on that.
And not only that, what just intrigued me, I didn't really realize this, I was trying to figure out what is different about this movie, is that they photographed everything in natural light, which is, from what I understand, highly unusual when it comes to doing a main, studio movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that, but I do know that the lighting and the cinematography on this movie is amazing. And just when you see those outdoor scenes of the wilderness and winter and what these men were going through, It really blows your mind.
Okay, I got to take this call.
Okay.
This is Sergeant Valawi from the Highway Patrol.
Okay.
Calling in, I assume, about 3777.
All right. Good morning, Sergeant. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Can you hear me? Or my radio's, I got Bluetooth on. And
you sound perfect. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, yeah, you were talking about the vigilantes, and of course they had a crooked sheriff, Henry Plummer, there. And at Virginia City, the gold would go out, only they would do it once a week so as to throw off bandits. So the only ones that knew when the Wells Fargo was leaving was the banker and the sheriff. So they would alternate. But oddly enough, the stage was getting robbed only when there was gold on the stage. So they all figured out quickly that the sheriff was tipping off his hooligans when it was worthwhile to rob the stage. So people of Virginia City decided they were going to become vigilantes and stop the sheriff and all of the crime And as part of the Masons, there's a code in the Masons. They were all part of that group. But, yeah, the legend and lore is that when they figured out who was in on the gang with Plummer, they put 3-77 on the door, and the thinking that maybe they had 3 hours, 7 minutes, and 77 seconds to get out of town.
Okay.
They were placed in a box 3 foot wide, 7 foot deep, and 77 inches long.
So it means both things.
So and there also is, that's just legend. There might be a real Mason code to it, so maybe a Mason understands it better. But when the Highway Patrol was created in 1935, they thought this is the first law enforcement organized by the people for the people of the state, and they hearkened back to the vigilantes who were seen at that time as the first law enforcement formed by the people for the people by the territory, because the sheriff, the real law, was not working. So it was law enforcement by the people for the people, and since the Highway Patrol was statewide and newly created, they adopted that 3-77 as kind of an honorary symbol. Not necessarily that we want to put people in boxes.
Now, let me ask you, Sergeant, has the Highway Patrol in recent years received any blowback? Because we're civilized now. You need to change that.
Oh, no, because like you said, I've had people come to me all the time and say, "Oh, does that mean when you came on the Highway Patrol in 3-77?" And they think that it's unique to the officer, but it's been on the patrol cars, and I don't think people really fully understand what it means. So we haven't really got any blowback, but it is representative to be more as a pledge towards the organization of law enforcement.
So when you graduate from from your Highway Patrol training,
from the academy, right,
and they give you the secret handshake and tell you all the secret rituals, I mean, is there any education on this, or does it just kind of go, you just kind of pick it up from talk?
Yeah, but you probably learned it from your fellow patrolmen, right?
Well, yeah, some of the fellow patrolmen, each academy is different, so it depends on when you go to the academy, who's teaching that part. Actually, when I went, there was a part of Montana history in our academy, which I don't think they have that anymore. So that's where I learned it, and from other patrolmen. But I don't know if it's necessarily still kind of told or taught at the academy these days with other stuff to take its place. But I always found it interesting, and I've been to Virginia City, so I thought it was kind of cool.
Hey, so here's something I didn't know. I got a text from Harlan Wells. He says, our Montana Air National Guard F-15s also had the 3-77 on their tails. So the legend lives on.
I did not know that. It would be interesting to see if somebody that knows the group of Masons history, because that's where it really started. And like I said, it may not have anything to do with the coffins or the time to leave town, but that's what everybody started thinking it meant, because that's when they came to the door and would hang Henry Plummer and his gang of outlaws that were in the group. So, all
right. Well, Sergeant, thank you so much. And by the way, you guys pretty much do your jobs alone. You're almost always the first one at the scene of an accident, and I can't imagine some of the things you folks have to see and deal with, and we appreciate your service.
Oh, appreciate that, Peter. Thank you very much.
You take care out there.
Oh, okay.
Thanks a bunch.
If you ever buy beer, they also have the 3-7-77 on Big Sky Brewing labels. I've noticed it there too.
Okay,
you're going to see it everywhere. It's like pie.
Drink too much of this, and this
you might end up in the grave.
Anyway,
right?
Let's get back to what we were talking about. You wanted to make a clarification.
I want to make a clarification because I was confused early on, and I think I might have confused others, and I don't want to do that. So there's two authors that we've been talking about kind of separately. One is the creator of what eventually became the script of The Revenant, and that's a guy by the name of Tim Punke. I believe that's how you say it, Punke. And he was actually an adjunct professor here at the University of Montana for a while, which is interesting. Well, Greg Strandberg, who I do have in studio today, also wrote a book on Hugh Glass, also lives in Missoula. But they're different tracks, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so just so everyone's clear. Okay. Expert on Hugh Glass, not the creator of The Revenant.
Yeah, I have nothing to do with The Revenant.
Although he looks exactly like Leonardo DiCaprio.
All right,
I don't know about that.
Let's get Katie on the line. Katie, first of all, thank you for holding. You're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Well, good morning. When I read the history of Hugh Glass and the story about him as a young man being invited to either walk the plank or join the pirates. Lafitte, I guess, was the pirate. I have a connection with Lafitte because my husband's family lived in Liberty, Texas, which is on the Trinity River, and they had a great aunt who was a school teacher and never married. And when she died, they found a huge amount of treasure that this pirate Lafitte would come and hide with her.
Wow.
She left all of her money to a wildlife refuge there in Liberty County, Texas.
Now,
I thought that
Lafitte
was
is the same pirate that
That would have been
Glass-
the pirate associated with Hugh Glass then, yeah.
Right. I just thought that was funny that we had another connection, which kind of led, a little bit of
Now,
believability to his story about jumping ship and swimming ashore on the Gulf Coast.
Now, Katie, both of you guys, Lafitte was the one who assisted Andy Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans, right?
Well,
yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
As a matter of
guys,
fact,
I would trust Peter. Peter was there.
He actually helped to save the United States because the French were about to overrun, I believe it was the French about to overrun New Orleans when Lafitte and his pirates came to their rescue. So.
Well, and now you know he had a girlfriend on the Trinity River.
Well, there you go. All right. Thanks for your call, Katie.
This is so fascinating.
One of the things with Hugh Glass is that he has 2 points in his life where he comes up to Montana in the 1820s, but then before that he was down on the Gulf Coast, and then also in the 1830s he goes down and he gets into the Santa Fe trade route, which is going down there into that area. So.
Wow. It's amazing how all these things tie together, isn't it?
Yeah. And the thing with all the fur trappers is that none of these people came from this area of Montana. Most of them came from back east. They came from places like Pennsylvania, Tennessee, places like that. They all started in St. Louis. That was the breaking off, the jumping off point to come up the Missouri River, 1,100 miles to the Mandan villages, which is where Hugh Glass and those guys were trying to get right before the grizzly attacked them.
So, Battle of New Orleans,
Right.
already getting corrected.
Okay.
This caller says it was the English General Packingham at the Battle of New Orleans.
Okay. My humble apologies.
I don't know. We're not historians. Greg?
About all I know about the War of 1812 is that we can blame that for 10 years of no fur trade on the Missouri and in Montana because it totally disrupted the economy, the recession after it, and then the panic of 1819 that followed just devastated things. And it wasn't until 1822 when William Henry Ashley came along, a would-be businessman, would-be politician in Missouri territory, put an ad in the St. Louis newspaper saying, I want 100 men to assist me in getting the fur trade started again in Upper Missouri. And that's how we got men like Jim Bridger, Hugh Glass, Jedediah Smith, all the famous people that we know.
So, okay, you've done a lot of research on a lot of different mountain men. Not to be sexist, but we call them mountain men, right? So, in all of your research, have you ever found a mountain woman? A Hugh Glass that was more Huline. I don't know.
A little more feminine, perhaps. Yeah.
I've not found any mountain women. There are a few black people that were mountain men. Those are the rare ones. Mainly, though, women that were doing the work of the fur trappers were Indians. A lot of the mountain men had Indian wives. They had them do all the basics, skinning the animals, taking care of camp, doing all this stuff. And they're really the unspoken people in the history of the mountain men era because they did a lot of stuff and they don't get any credit for it.
Now, specifically here in Montana, what were the areas that were where the mountain men would gather, and were there any rendezvous locations here in Montana? And what was the favorite place for them to go?
Well, when you look at the fur trade in Montana, you really have to divide it into two areas. And the first went from about 1806 to 1812 when the war started. And that had nothing to do with Hugh Glass, and that had more to do with our original mountain man, John Coulter, right after the Lewis and Clark expedition. And then in the 1820s, they started to come to the same general area. But the thing that ties both of those time frames together is their desire to get to the Three Forks of the Missouri here in Montana, because those were the plum trapping spots. That were the best beaver were there.
So, which leads to one of the questions I really wanted to talk about. My childhood imagination, John Coulter, this guy. Maybe you should tell, because there hasn't been a movie about this guy, so I can't ruin anything yet for you.
Yeah,
apparently giving you the history of Hugh Glass will ruin it for you.
Yeah.
We won the Civil War, so I hope I don't ruin Lincoln for you. you can still watch the performance and enjoy it.
Yes, yes.
And by we, I mean the
with
United
John
States
Coulter, he's really, just like you said, a really amazing character. I don't know why there hasn't been any movies on this guy. There's not that many books on him. I have a few novels on him, but when we get to John Coulter, it's best to think of the end of the Lewis and Clark expedition and go right to August 21st, 1806, because that's when John Coulter goes up to Lewis and Clark and says, hey, guys, can you let me off of my commission early? There's these 2 fur trappers that just came upriver, and they want to go to the Yellowstone. I know where it's at. Why don't you let me show them? And this is where we get the very first commercial enterprise in Montana of people going up to make money in the state.
Okay, so this is the first business opportunity in Montana, basically. What happens next? Let's just go through the whole story.
So we have John Coulter. He gets up there with these 2 guys named Joe Hancock and Forrest Dixon, and he guides them up to the mouth of the Yellowstone, the mouth of the Bighorn River off of the Yellowstone, near today's Bighorn, Montana, just to the east of Billings. And they pretty much trap that area for about a year. And then John Coulter heads back downriver, and while he's heading back downriver, he meets Manuel Lisa coming up, which is this big name in the fur trade we never hear about. And they convince John Coulter, he's got about a party of 40 or 50 men, including George Drouillard, another Lewis and Clark alumni, and they go up to the same spot on the Bighorn River there, and they start a fort. And this is the first permanent establishment in Montana. It's called Fort Raymond. Sometimes they call it Fort Manuel. And this is the place where the men winter so they can go all around and trap beaver to send back to St. Louis to make money.
We were talking about John Coulter starting up a business enterprise here in Montana.
Now, this is not to be confused with our friend Jim Coulter, who used to work here and used to work at Flanagan's, and so they might be related.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who
Anyway.
knows?
Yeah, so we got these mountain men. They're coming up here to Montana. They got these forts set up so they can trap beaver. And what they do is they go out in small parties of maybe 2, 3, 5 men and go out to catch the beaver for a couple of days and then come back to the fort, drop off their supplies and everything. A lot easier. So on one of these expeditions in 1808, we have John Coulter and his friend John Potts, who's a German, also was on the Lewis and Clark expedition. They go over to the 3 Forks of the Missouri, which is a couple of days away from their fort. And they're trapping beaver there in the summer when all of a sudden they hear some noises up ahead in the bush. John Potts is like, it's nothing, maybe just some buffalo. John Coulter isn't so sure. He's already had some run-in with the Indians by this point, and sure enough, upriver is about quite a few hundred Blackfeet Indians just waiting for him there. And that's when we get the famous encounter that turns into the story of Coulter's Run.
Okay, let's hit it.
Okay, so
here's the nudity, kids.
So what we have happen is you got these hundreds of Indians on the bank of the river, and they're telling these 2 men to come ashore. So John Coulter figures, well, I'm just going to do what they say. Comes ashore. Right away, they take his gun, they take everything they has, and they strip him totally naked. So he's standing there. And then they're trying to get the other guy to come ashore, John Potts. Well, he's saying, well, forget that after just seeing this. What
I
you
don't
guys
think
doing?
so.
Yeah, so he says, I don't think so. He doesn't wait more than that. He pulls his gun up, takes a shot at one. Well, they just fill him with arrows. He was actually lucky enough to shoot a Blackfeet, and they just pin-cushion him with arrows is how the quote goes. So at that point, they pull him ashore, pull him out of the canoe, and they just start hacking him to bits, because that's what the Indians would like to do, is good entertainment.
Wow.
And then here's John Coulter standing there completely naked, wondering, boy, are they going to start doing the same to me? Well,
Right.
the Indians have already kind of had a bit of their fun. They kind of got their guy back that got shot, so they decide that they're going to run John Coulter and let him run out there, and then they're going to have a few Indians chase after him and catch him and kill him. Unfortunately, things don't quite go as they planned. And what happens is that John Coulter starts going out there. He's running along the plains in the summer.
Obviously, he's barefoot.
He's barefoot. He's got cactus on the ground. His feet are starting to bleed. For some reason, he's running so hard, or he's exerting himself so much, he starts getting blood coming out of his nose even. So he's in real bad shape here. He's looking behind his shoulder. He's got Indians coming against him. But I guess the adrenaline just kicks in, and he starts running like crazy. He manages to get away from it until there is just one Indian left behind him.
Wow.
Now, this Indian's got a spear, and he is just worn out. He gets close enough to Coulter. He goes to try to stab him, throws himself off balance, starts falling to the ground. The spear breaks. Coulter rushes up, grabs the top of the spear tip, and runs the Indian through with it. After that, he takes a spear tip, he takes the Indian's blanket that he had. By this point, the Jefferson River is pretty close, just a few hundred yards away. The other Indians behind are really angry now because of what they just did to his friend there. So Coulter starts running, gets to the river, gets to a log jam, manages to hide under it while the Blackfeet Indian are all around looking for him, and at some points are even on top of the log jam but don't know he's under there.
Wow. That is so crazy.
So after this, the Indians are looking around for most of the night trying to find this guy. Eventually they figure, look, he got away. They go back to camp or whatever. John Coulter gets out of there. And then for the next 11 days, he spends walking back to Fort Raymond over on the Bighorn and Yellowstone River.
Naked.
Well,
he
just
got
his
the
blanket.
Indian's blanket.
Yeah.
Just eating roots and berries and whatever he can find, whatever he can get with that spear of his.
But he's barefoot still.
He's barefoot still,
Wow.
yep. So, real survival story, early Montana adventure. Just a lot of people don't know about it, and like you said,
There's a movie in there somewhere. Actually, that I told you guys during the break,
we hadn't heard about this.
that whole story was made into a movie, but it was actually set in Africa, and it was called The Naked Prey. I for some reason I remember it. I saw it as a kid. The exact same thing you're talking about, except it was set in Africa.
Peter rented this as a teenager, and it wasn't what he was expecting.
No, stop it. The natives stripped this guy naked, and they sent him out to sporting. You'll get a half an hour head start, and we're off we come. And they sent the entire village after him. And after a couple of days, he was able to outwit them or outfight them, and he made his way to a fort.
Yeah.
So.
And you know why they made that movie in Africa, I have a feeling? Because of the success of Zulu in the 1960s.
Oh, possible.
It could be, absolutely.
All right. Well, we got a question or a comment about.
All right, here we go.
the
So
Revenant.
enough of me going on and on. Roger.
Yes.
Good morning, Roger. You're on. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Good morning, Peter. I was just wondering, in regards to the movie The Revenant, it seems like it sounds like a remake of an earlier movie called Man in the Wilderness, which was directed, I think, by John Huston and also acted, and Richard Harris was in it. Is this true?
I've heard that. I've heard that on my website on an article I have about that. And I've heard the name Richard Harris and this movie mentioned as being associated with Hugh Glass, where they just kind of change things and change the names and stuff. But I'm not sure.
Well, I haven't seen The Revenant, but from the clips and the comments and everything else, it sounds like it was just about the same type of thing. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that.
Well, thanks a lot, Roger.
We have a caller we're going to go to, but real quick, if you put them together and had them duke it out for the most mountainly man in history, who would come out on top, John Coulter or Hugh Glass?
I think I'd have to give that to John Coulter because he was wounded and shot by Indians more often. He had more encounters with him. He was out in the wilds longer. I just have to give it to him.
But did he get ripped up by a bear, though?
He never did have that happen. I'll give him that.
But that might be a testament to your mountain manliness to not get ripped up by a bear.
All right, let's get Jeff on the line. Jeff, thanks for holding. You're on.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Excellent.
Have you guys ever seen the movie Mountain Men?
Have not.
There's a movie that you really need to watch, and what brought that up is our, back to the rated R section, our running naked from the Indians. There's a very close scenario for that in that movie where one of the mountain men is in the same scenario, runs from the Indians. Instead of hiding under a log jam, he hides in a little beaver dam and blah, blah, blah. But regardless, it's a excellent movie. One of the stuntmen from it used to live down here in the Bitterroot.
How old is it?
It's 1980. Charlton Heston's in it.
Wow.
Yeah, Charlton Heston and Keith. I forgot the other guy's name.
Brian Keefe.
Brian Keith.
I'm cheating, by the way. I'm looking at the internet. I don't actually know this stuff.
Oh, come on. You're not supposed to admit that part.
Well, I just feel guilty because I ruined a movie for you by letting you hear about John Coulter. I should have kept you ignorant of all this stuff.
That's okay. No, you guys need to go get this movie or order this movie and watch it. It is.
It's got to be on Netflix. It might be on Netflix or YouTube or something.
It probably is. It was a pretty widely known movie. And like I said, we had one of the stuntmen that acted in that movie. He used to live up, he's passed away now, unfortunately, but he used to live up the West Fork in the Bitterroot.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
So anyway, watch that movie and you'll hear your rated R scene in there.
so have you seen The Revenant?
No, not yet. That's one we're definitely waiting for. I have read the book, and the book was phenomenal.
I will tell you, it would probably be better to see this movie on the big screen rather than wait for it on TV, because I think, it'll definitely, quite literally, minimize it on TV.
Yeah, that's why we haven't watched it yet. We're headed up to Missoula to the big screen and watch it up there.
All right, good deal. Thanks for the call.
You guys have a great day. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. And if you want to talk about fear, I mean, when you go to the concession stand and pay $9 for a box of popcorn, that's brutal, right there.
Yeah. I get the big bucket that costs you $20 and then only $4 to fill the rest of the year because it's just more economical.
All right, brothers under the skin, right here.
I wanted to hear real quick before we leave John Coulter in the past. or at least until the next film. What does Coulter's Hell? I mean, anyone who's traveled to Yellowstone might have heard this term, Coulter's Hell. How does that play into his story?
Well, Coulter went exploring down in the Yellowstone National Park area in the winter of 1807 when he was sent out from Fort Raymond by Manuel Lease to just kind of explore the area, chart it out, figure out where the good beaver trapping areas were. And he ran into this area that had all these steaming geysers and hot pools, and he called it Coulter's Hell. I'd never seen anything like it before. And when he gets back to the fort and tells the men, none of them believe him. None of them I think he lost his mind, and they make up the funny story, oh, there's Coulter's Hell. That's how it got the name.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in John's imagination from childhood, this whole journey, this runaway from the Indians that are chasing him, all took place in Yellowstone National Park. This is why John's not a historian.
Yeah, they're about a year apart on those two events.
All right, let's go to the callers.
Which came first, the run or?
We had him exploring Yellowstone first, and then the next summer he did the run.
Okay, because you would not run one barefoot through all the mud pots.
If he was having the problem in Yellowstone where he was naked, I don't think he would have made it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get Tyler on the line. Hi, Tyler.
Hi guys. Greatest mountain man ever step foot in Montana. A real live legend. Actually survived and did actually do a lot of the stuff in the movie. Jeremiah Liver Eating Johnston.
Liver Eating Johnson. Right. Yeah.
Jeremiah Johnson was a real man, and he did live in this area. He wintered in the Tetons in Yellowstone, and a little known fact is that he's actually not buried in L.A. He was moved in the 1980s up to Cody, Wyoming.
Wow!
So if you guys ever are over in Yellowstone, head out the west exit and stop in. There's a ghost town in Cody, Wyoming. And when I was on a road trip, I actually found his grave, and I was so amazed because my father had always told me when I was a kid that he's buried in L.A. And they have the story there when he was actually moved, and Robert Redford was actually at his reburial.
Wow!
Along with a bunch of mountain men that were around back then.
Wow!
So,
hey, thanks for the call, Tyler.
Yeah,
I want to see if the historian agrees with you. Is Jeremiah Johnson the greatest mountain man in Montana history?
I can't say too much on Jeremiah Johnson because when I started writing my book in 2013, I researched all the mountain men that had done most of the stuff in Montana or what would become Montana, and he was one that had done more down in the Wyoming area where the rendezvous system got started. And they just kind of abandoned Montana after the War of 1812, didn't get back up here again until really into the 1830s.
Okay. Let's get Diane on before we take our final break. Hi, Diane.
Hi. Yes, this isn't actually regarding the greatest mountain men of Montana, but this is just a story that is truly, truly of epic proportions, deserving of a Ken Burns miniseries. And that is, if you've never read the book Astoria, it's very well worth reading and learning more about. Truly, it's got it all. Survival, starvation, it's all about the fur trade. An amazing, amazing story. Wanted to get some comment from your guest.
That's called Astoria?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes.
Great. All right, thanks for the call. So what do you think about it?
What Diane's talking about is the Astoria expedition that John Jacob Astor got started on the Pacific Coast around 1808, 1809, and we had some amazing overland expeditions to that led by Wilson Price Hunt. And there is a woman, if we want to get into women mountain men, Mary Dorian would probably be the closest. This is a woman that got abandoned out in the wild by her husband, had to make a snow cave that she lived in for 53 days with her young 2-year-old and 4-year-old between here and Oregon before some Indians found her, took pity on her. And then when some men were coming down from the river from Astoria after they had been kicked out by the British leading up to the War of 1812, she just happened to spot them coming down the river and flagged them down and managed to get back to civilization.
Now, was a relative, a son, grandson, whatever, of John Jacob Astor, didn't he go down on the Titanic?
There was a relative on there. I'm not sure if he drowned or not, and I think you might be correct on that. Sure. And John Jacob Astor was the richest American of his time. And adjusted for inflation, he's the richest American of all time, made all of his money in the fur trade and later New York real estate.
We got lots of folks that want to visit with our guest in studio, Greg Strandberg, author of Tribes and Trappers, A History of Montana, talking about John Coulter. We've been talking about Hugh Glass. But William, what's on your mind this morning?
Right, I'm just calling, I may have missed it, but did anybody mention that wonderful epic poem, The Song of Hugh Glass, by John Neihardt, which I first encountered in, about 1950 in my class at Missoula County High School?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with that poem myself, mainly because it is a long poem, and I mainly went with history.
It was kind of was it more like an epic poem there, William?
It is definitely an epic poem. It's about part of his volume 1 of his cycle of his a cycle of the American West. It has the Song of Three Friends, the Song of Hugh Glass, and the Song of Jed Smith.
Wow.
And it's wonderful reading.
Well, we'll
keep that in mind.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're learning lots of great stuff here this morning. All right, let's get line 3 up. This is Jay. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning. Good morning. Boy, we've got a field here that's rich in lore and American history. I'm going to put in my bid for Captain Joe Walker as greatest of the mountain men. And he lived a very long and eventful life on the frontier. And he was a very important character in our history. By the way, the Song of Hugh Glass is a book about Hugh Glass and the men around him, like Broken Hand Fitzpatrick and the others.
Now maybe, Jay, you could tell us, is with Joe Walker, is this the person you're referring to that also became the first sheriff of Oregon Territory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Say what?
Yeah, he was in the early fur trade and eventually got into it, and he became one of the first U.S. Marshals as well.
Yeah, exactly. But eventually he grew old and he went blind, and he was escorting a doctor west, and they were set upon by Mexican bandits. And the Walker was too blind to help, and the doctor told the bandits, "That's Joe Walker, but he's old and he's gone blind." And the bandits took their hats off and said, "We apologize."
Wow.
And they left.
Wow.
And he said, "Well, if I can't protect one person, it's about through." So he, in his late 70s, he retired to his daughter's ranch in California, and he was being interviewed by a reporter when the news came that Custer and his men were rubbed out, and the reporter asked him what he thought of these soldiers. Walker's answer, and this is a quote, he said, they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. The reporter left and said, "I'll be back in a couple of months." But old Walker had died.
Wow.
And think of all we had missed. But anyway, there's a good man.
Thanks
and
for the call.
another man was George Ruxton. In Manitou Springs, Colorado, Ruxton Avenue is a street that goes up. At the top of it is the station for the railroad that goes up Pikes Peak. And that's named after George Ruxton. And there's another one. He was an Englishman, but he wrote a tremendous narrative about, there's a book called Ruxton of the Rockies that's excellent reading. And he was another coyote man. I myself have lived in the wilds with packs of wild coyotes. They're my buddies.
All right. We got to take one more call. Thanks so much for your call. Art, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi, I had a question for your guest. In my readings about the fur trade, it was indicated that the reason the fur trade had been so abandoned in most of Montana was because it was so fiercely defended by the Blackfeet Indians, and that the mountain men could never really establish a trade or a friendship with them. Is that true from
you're
your
exactly
research?
right. You're exactly right, Art, because the Blackfeet were the major tribe. They always had a problem with the Crow Indians, for instance, were friendly with the whites and traded with them a lot. But the Blackfeet were the one tribe that they couldn't get any trade going with, and it comes back to the night, July 21st, 1806, when Meriwether Lewis killed a Blackfeet Indian in Montana, and that resulted in 30 years of enmity against the whites.
Wow.
Oh, thank you for your answer.
You bet. Thanks for your call. Okay, we have like a minute and a half left. So go ahead, John. Sorry.
I was just going to say, thanks for coming on the show, Greg. You've been great.
Yeah, thank you so much
whipping
for having me.
whipping out a date like that, that's pretty impressive. I got it.
I'm really good with dates. That's why I majored in history. I'm great with dates.
Probably not all dates. I don't know. Usually you never know.
The kind that are in old dusty books.
There
I'm
we
pretty
go.
good.
So how do we get your books? How do we get more information about you and what you've written?
Well, you can find all of my books on Amazon. I have a website about Montana and Missoula called BigSkyWords.com.
All right, great.
Yeah, and you should definitely check out his book, Tribes and Trappers. You'll hear more of the stuff you listened to today. And you can even find the secret ending to the movie that I wasn't allowed to talk about because I was going to ruin history for everybody.
Well, just go see the movie first, all right? And get lots of popcorn.
And for those of you who can't get into an R-rated movie, I apologize that Peter won't let me tell you.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
We have 30 seconds.
No, we're going to let him live in suspense.
Tell the end.
Live in suspense.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to work this thing out here. All right. Hatchets at 10 paces.
I call the bear on my team.
What's coming out on tomorrow's great
tomorrow's
show?
Friday, so we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's open phones.
Yeah, we'll be visiting with Kirsten Pabst to start the day. She's the Missoula County Attorney, our weekly crime report. So, all right, you guys have a great day. And again, once again, Greg Strandberg, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, you hang out, you live right here in Missoula, right?
Right here in Missoula all year.
Awesome. Good deal. We appreciate you being with us and sharing all these stories.
Thank you.